Creation. For every person, the word art has a different meaning. In addition, for every person who takes an interest in art, there is another understanding. An understanding of art that goes no further than this is subjectivist. All art is equal, just different. Art can be practically anything. Humans have limited perception, not just of their own surroundings, but of themselves and their own intentions, pursuits, and accomplishments. The actual intention of a person is a sum of that person's intentions, both perceived and not perceived, unclouded by the limitations of individual consciousness. Thus, where a person may believe he understands the nature of his pursuit, he may in fact be deceived in the sense that other intentions, unseen by him, are what drive him. From the perspective of objective imagination, there are degrees of art, and the import of any given work is reliant upon the actual intention, conscious or subconscious, of the creator of the work, limited by his technical ability in pursuit of that intention. From the perspective of objective imagination, the highest form of art is the byproduct of pursuits specifically chosen to increase understanding of the fundamental creative and destructive elements of the universe. All other creative pursuits are objectively lesser representations of art. This is the hierarchy inherent in the manifestation of what the term art describes. The core question is, to what does the artwork aspire? Does it aspire to describe a single relatively superficial and fleeting emotional thought? Does it aspire to the representation of archetypes, those experiences that remain consistently with man over perhaps thousands of years? Does the artwork aspire to even more than that, to an understanding of the underlying codes of manifestation, the mathematics of the universe, the most fundamental representations from which even archetypes stem? Or does it seek even more than that? Does it seek to depict the singular ultimate oneness of the universe, of God itself? To gain a picture of the interest of any person, one need only look at what they surround themselves with, and how they treat that with which they are surrounded. Humans are necessarily attracted to that which is most relevant to them, to that which depicts the various options for their next step of understanding and the path that they have chosen. To determine the position of humanity as a whole, it is sufficient to look to the nature of its current accumulated creative endeavors. But to estimate humanity's course, time must be taken into account, and then a trajectory appears, with all of the intersections to which his course will take him. Man's course currently is guided to an unprecedented extent by the influence of commercial pursuits that extend into almost every aspect of human life. These interests are not focused on the ideals of those that are focused on gaining a first-hand comprehension of beauty and harmony. Instead, they are focused on the pursuit of profit in the context of consumerism-based capitalism. This monopolization of influence will have an enormous and detrimental effect on humanity's creative endeavors. Mankind, distracted from the inner world of his conscience and from the beauty of nature, will increasingly develop ideas that are lacking in originality of thought. Man's output will increasingly shift to be ever more derivative of what he has been fed by a source that he himself recklessly decreased. In this way, the nutrition available to man to feed his creative endeavors, to feed his spirit, his mind, and his body is diminished, and so too, necessarily as a result, is the integrity of his output. Art is the expressed byproduct of the pursuit of an idea. The idea is where the potential is held. The expression is a limiting force. The artist channels the content of the idea and makes it communicable. The artist articulates the idea, whether with words, music, physical form, or visual imagery. Articulation of an idea requires, minimally, the grammar and vocabulary necessary to express the content of the idea. If an idea is simple, the language required to express it will be simple. If an idea is more complex, then the language required will also be more complex. Children learn simple language first so that they can express simple needs, such as communicating hunger or fatigue. As a child's brain develops with experience, more language is required to communicate a greater array of needs, such as a desire to satisfy curiosity regarding something newly encountered. The articulation of the adult is no different from the articulation of a child in this way. The adult's language is complex in comparison to that of a child, but within the adult world, the range of language from the simple to the complex is no smaller than the range between the adult and the child. Language is used to communicate everything from satisfaction with a cool glass of water on a hot day, to the atomic structure of water, to the beauty of the interaction of light and water, to the complexity of fluid dynamics on an oceanic scale. A single syllable can communicate many ideas sufficiently. Other ideas require volumes of explication, volumes that individually consider a multitude of facets, all necessarily taken into account in order to digest the balance of the ultimate concept. From the most complex and encompassing to the least complex and most particular, a certain set of language will be pertinent. In whatever form the language takes, written, musical, visual, performative, the language will articulate the idea as well as it can. The idea is the objective. It is separate from the artist. The artist cannot claim the idea. The artist must be quiet so as to let the idea speak. To be quiet is to match the language to the idea. Then the idea speaks for itself through the artist. The artist must develop himself to let the idea speak. It is the artist's shortcoming that causes the expression to falter. The artist approaches something that remains cloudy in his sight. He cannot see all of it. He can only express what he sees. He can only express what he has the language to express. Beyond that, his voice falters. There are innumerable languages available by which to express ideas. Those languages pertain to any of the individual senses or any combination of senses. An idea does not need to be explicated in words. An idea can be a combination of scents that give rise to a feeling. An idea can be a combination and relationship of simple tones that convey an intuitive concept of dimension. Always, though, a degree, a level of complexity will pertain to an idea, and that level of complexity in language must be attained if the idea is to be described. All art is to mimic some aspect of manifested nature, to mimic in the sense of conveying in capsule the emotive content of the aspect of nature chosen. Nature is infinite. It can be described in direct literal observational terms. It can be described in expressive terms, or impressionistic terms, or reductive terms. It can be described mathematically, or in terms of its history. But to attempt to describe the totality of it is of another order of complexity. Nature in totality is both simple and complex. To explicate its complexity would be an infinite and eternal task. To explicate its simplicity while retaining the import of its potential for manifestation requires either alluding to the idea through metaphor perhaps, or actually attempting to directly convey the singular experience of that complex totality through the expression of simple abstract beauty. Beauty in the form of the totality of nature is not the same as artificial beauty. Storm waves are beautiful, summer rain is beautiful, the woodland oak is beautiful, the lion is beautiful, the puppy is beautiful. All are real. They are beautiful as a result of their integrity, the truth, the honesty, the cruelty, the vulnerability, the joy of their being. However, the beauty of the puppy does not convey the beauty of the winter storm. Beauty is severe in its intensity. Beauty distilled goes beyond the costume, beyond even the athlete. The idea, in other words, is not only limited by the language of the artist, but by the subject matter. The subject itself filters and channels content. The subject is itself an expression made up of the particular balance of content that it manifests. Individuals choose as a result of the balance of their own content what they wish to explore. This is to choose what it is by which to be influenced. The artist chooses not just that, but also what it is they wish to become, in that they become the voice of the ideas they portray. They express those ideas into their world. They promote those ideas through their attention and dissemination. To promote an idea is to feed it, to seek to develop and increase its influence. It is to take the influence as an ingredient into the soul. From the idea, other ideas emanate until a universe of necessities appear. That is the experiential space into which the artist steps. Objective imagination requires a choice of water. Water is the closest representation we have of absolute beauty, of the infinitude of the universe, of life itself. It is both simple and complex. The import of its role is complete, touching every aspect of the experience of life. The lessons it teaches are primary lessons that contain within them the answers to the questions that most pertinently govern every choice humans make. Ultimately, the artist may only apply what he has the capacity to apply. Because of that, the artist must increase his capacity if he is to increase the potential import of his expression. The making of art is the recognition of the potential for the crafting of form, for the forming of matter into something particular, into something of chosen content, into something that is itself an expression of a set of manifestation that has an energy of its own. To achieve increased potential of expression, the artist must embody an increase in potency. The artist, through expertise developed in practice, must apply his principles of creation to himself. He must consider himself a living work of creation and process. He must sculpt himself, his body, his mind, and his spirit. He must compose himself, his ability, his energy, such that he lives the energy, the evolved form of that which he wishes to embody. If the artist wishes his work to be truly strong, then he must consider that of which he is made, how it must be composed towards the functionality of objective purpose. Just as a work of art is made up of the balance of its component parts, so too is the mind of the artist made up of its substantive content and its procedural ability. So too is the artist's body made up of the strength and resilience of the organs and the interactive capacity of its limbs. So too is the artist's vision composed of that by which it has been allowed to establish its reach. The artist as a person is also an element in society, a force of influence within society. Because the artist knows the import of that which is allowed into the frame of his creation, the artist must also appreciate that he himself has import, that every individual has import. He must appreciate that by increasing his own integrity, the integrity of his artwork is increased, and thereby he injects into his society the integrity that he has achieved. He himself may become a nutrient within his society, a nutrient for the collective mind of society to take into account, by which it itself may increase in expressive value. The composition of an image comes down to the choice of what is included in a given defined space to achieve increased probability of a certain result in a viewer's experience. At its most basic, it includes decisions with regard to shapes, lines, shades, colors, and tones. At a more sophisticated level, it can include choices regarding moods, choices that require some understanding of psychology, and how intellectual associations and emotional mood responses can differ between different groups in response to the same trigger. Everything humans do and use is composed towards the task they intend the action of the mechanism to accomplish. In this way, a painting is no different from a hammer, a stew, a smartphone, a corporate chief executive, or a farm laborer. Each is a composition of traits suited to the accomplishment of a pre-construed goal. The necessary ingredients must be present in sufficient amounts, and they must be employed in the correct proportions and with the appropriate strength so as to work with other ingredients in the desired way.